episode is sponsored by Raise Tech, end-to-end IT solutions for your business growth.
So, hello everyone, this is on the Agile couch. Today it's me, Andres Dagutis, and together with me it's Havanas.
Yes.
Maybe you'll introduce a bit later yourself. I want to get to this topic which we will talk today. If you're looking into YouTube, maybe you're already seeing the drawings and things from the topic which we will discuss. But how I thought about this topic, actually for some reason, I know maybe it's because of the end of the year, a lot of my friends and surroundings started to have this question, how to create a good trainings? What are options for the trainings? If you are creating, what you kind of should focus on, what is important things, what you maybe leave behind and stuff like that. And I saw even, one of my friends, I think she won the ticket to training, how to create trainings.
Okay.
And she even posted, it was a great thing, she learned a lot. And I thought, okay, cool, maybe we can talk about this, because I reflected when I was a Scrum Master, I created a lot of trainings, and it was such a fun. At the same time, it was such a challenging work, because it's definitely a different thing just to to talk with a squad or with your colleagues, and to create trainings require such a much more work, and then even you have to develop yourself to do that and to facilitate all of that. And that's what we will talk today about. It's about trainings, and I guess it's a huge topic. So and we'll have around half an hour, so we will see how it will go to which direction and where we end up. But it's good that I have Havanas today nearby, because you are an expert on these kind of things, so you can introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. Yes. So I'm Havanas. That's indeed me. So I have experience with trainings for around 5.5, 6 years, and I have worked in multiple big corporations such as Booking.com, Danske Bank, and recently TikTok. And then I worked as a trainer. I also created trainings, and then recently I was working as a training manager, right? So I was responsible for the entire process of the training. So curating the content, delivering the content, making sure the content is within the right format, and then also evaluating the training, right? How do we make sure the trainings are effective? And then how do we improve based on our measurements? So that's what I was busy with in the last.
Cool. And you all, I think, mentioned those subtopics which we can talk, from the beginning, how to create trainings, maybe even at the beginning, what are the different training options? Because even this, there's not a single options to provide a training. There's different options which suitable for different occasions or the different problems which you want to solve. And then we can go after that to our subtopics. So what are different training options from your perspective?
Different training options.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what do you mean by that?
What I'm meaning, it's like when I think about maybe I need to create a training, I already think, is it on site? So trainings where we can draw something. Is it online but still live? Or maybe it's a recording somewhere put in the cloud or in the company's infrastructure where person could see it, maybe do the test after that, maybe don't, but it's already pre-record thing, and he can do it anytime.
Sure.
I know, maybe you even had the 4 options. I thought about these 2.
Sure. So when you talk about trainings, it's important to differentiate training and learning.
Oh yeah.
Right? So learning, so in a lot of people's mind, right, learning is about like, I'll come to the classroom, I'll sit through the training and I'll learn something, right? But in reality, learning, it happens all the time. There's a new system introduced, there's some kind of system introduced, right? And then you need to send a specific type of an email, or you need to do a specific task, and you're not sure how to do that. Then you spend a bit of time, maybe you ask your colleague, hey, Andrews, I think you work here for a while, can you help me? And then you help me, and then I learn something. So that's the majority of learning, how it happens, either by you walking or like working through the system and then walking through the system, or just learning from your colleagues. So that's the absolute majority of the learning that happens. And then a tiny minority of that is actually the training course itself. So usually, like the really intensive courses are for new hires, right? Because when they come, they're very fresh, they're very new, and then you really want them to start with some knowledge,
Just a culture,
and
I guess, things,
culture, and you want them to
Mhm.
succeed. A lot of the times for more mature workers, right? So companies have it's much more challenging to arrange a specific time to make sure the training will be effective, and then it would be like a waste of time, and people would not just enjoy training, but they would get actually something out of that. So because of that, a lot of companies they give it a lot of thought whether this training should really go on or not. And then unfortunately a lot of the trainings that are still taken, the formal ones, very often they don't really yield the needed results.
Okay.
So we kind of did a training, we put like a check mark, hey guys, there was a training, we did that, and then that's it. Like that's
But then,
gone.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard that if it's let's say pre-recorded, so it's usually, and it's really suitable for the newcomers because it's easier to pre-record and then do the same option for the newcomers, like to learn about the company culture and stuff like that. And then the trainings like custom trainings,
Yes.
it should be for more mature because you
Yeah.
have to deep dive into something.
Of course. So look, so when you create a training, and especially if you're talking about training courses, right? So one of the biggest problems that you experience in this ever-changing world is the changes themselves, right? So the moment you start making something very custom, very specific, like the chances of that getting out of date are incredibly high, right? So you want to teach them a specific system, then the interface changes, the test change, there was some kind of update, boom, a part of your training is already irrelevant. So what do? How do you update the course? And so it takes a lot of time to maintain. So, however, if you do it, like if you do it maybe less specialized, right, as you mentioned, right, things like culture, values, I mean, values are not changing that often, right, if ever. So if you do them more on like the principles, it's always easier to maintain those courses, right? And that's one of the traps that a lot of people fall into when they design trainings, is that they design something wonderful, but then what is forgotten is the amount of effort that needs to be taken to actually maintain that training.
Cool. And again, the ones which listen maybe don't see what I'm doing, but we mentioned key few things. So the purpose, when you trying to do something, I guess you have to know the purpose, what how it will be used,
Yes.
who will use and stuff like that. So that's where it's important to know your participants. If it's a newcomers, if it's already
100%.
Experts, stuff like that. At the same time, this what you mentioned is change, because yes, we live into fast-paced world with many things change. Maybe again, the culture of the company maybe doesn't change that much unless she's like the company doing that huge transformation, and then maybe some things can be different. But if you're doing about again the system, and that the system likes to, or that the customer want to do some changes constantly, you have to think about that too. Maybe the system doesn't change for many years, so that's again.
I can give you an
one of the
example.
possibilities.
So, for example, like if you work in, this is especially a challenge if you work in a fast-paced environment, right? So, for example, in Danske Bank, I was working in the Department of Sanctions. Sanctions are, it's the speed of light. Like Joe Biden may wake up tomorrow and he's like, screw this guy, sanctions, that's it.
Yeah.
And then he may even introduce a new type of sanctions, and then how the sanction, and then it's not like, the sanctions work in a very particular manner. It's not like you introduce a sanction and then everybody knows how to work with that. It's not really like that. Everybody tries to fly while they're falling, and they're like, okay, what do we do here? How exactly do we implement that? And so now imagine you designed a really specific training, right? How to work with sanction A, So if you make some kind of a cool video or so, then it may not be very productive. That may work for a month or two, and then one day it will just become irrelevant. So you need to always keep in mind, if you work in a high-paced industry, that your trainings need to be resilient enough so that not only they can withstand change, but you can easily update them. And you need to make sure to do that. Our trainers, like my team, sometimes had to update the trainings during the training, right? So they would deliver a session, and then maybe a couple of hours before the session, they had to change the content to make sure it was relevant to the audience because, that day everything changed.
So then what option would be suitable for this fast changing environment?
So what options would be suitable is to keep an open solution. An open solution. So for example, it means that in that case, e-learning maybe is not the best option.
Or video or something.
Or video then is not the best. It's not going to really work very well. Like, yeah, it would provide you adaptability and like whatnot. But nobody will be able to ask questions, and people would not learn from each other. And on top of that, it will just get old. So it means that in that case, the best option will be to have an actual expert, a trainer, who can deliver that topic. And then sure, people can do their homework, they can have a bit of a theory research, but then when you do something like practice and something very practical, so that best learned not by any kind of e-learning, and of course the change is not the only problem, but that is best learned when you're surrounded by your peers, and then when you hear each other's feedback, and when you are discussing that together and you work in groups. So that really works very well.
Oh yeah. Cool. I have two more things which just popped through from the things which you mentioned. I think we can try to talk about this, so benefits and downsides of those different options.
Yes.
Because even when I said, like, when I created these trainings, or still creating the trainings, every options have the good side, and then the side
course.
which not that great for
Yes.
some occasion or whatever. So can we then try to think about few benefits and then again few downsides from these online material?
Of course. So like the obvious benefit of the online material is the scalability. All right. So this will be especially useful again to create e-learning. I mean, it takes time. If you want good quality, I mean, if you ever created an e-learning and you want it to be good, and you don't want just like random games that people get immediately tired of, and then you want the material to be presented well, and then so that takes time to create, to test it, and then to make sure it's working, and then to maintain it. Now, if you're going all that lengths, you need to have at least some number of people to use that. So if you have a small organization, or if your audience is small, what is the purpose of that, right? So you need scale. So, and that works perfectly. So for really large organizations, or for large groups of people that need to, let's say, hear that or watch that e-learning, right? And that can be especially useful if you have people joining from different time zones, let's say from India, from Brazil, from US, from Australia, and they can all join at the same time. It works well when people have different speed of learning. So somebody learns faster, somebody maybe that specific material is a bit more difficult for him, so you can go back and hear it as many times as you want. And another really good benefit of this e-learnings is that you are by yourself. So you're comfortable, you're at home, and then you watch this e-learning. So
whatever.
you can do from your phone, you can do from any kind of monitor, and that's it.
And I think it's what I again noticed, that usually it's good when do these e-learnings when you know that it will be recurring, like every year, every half of the year,
Yes.
stuff like that. So, and you know that they would not change. So
Yes.
you just put it there.
Yes.
People can use it, and
Yes.
you don't need to have a head shake regarding who will facilitate, what
Yes.
will do. You just place it there, and that's all.
Yes.
But again, the downside that it's really takes time to think about these things, and usually to prepare them it's way longer.
Correct. Because basically when you create a learning, you need to understand that you need to think of the user path and of the story that you're telling here. So, and then you need to think of all the branches of how your story goes, and then where is the person most likely to click, what is he going to explore, and how how is the flow. So it also takes a lot of design.
Yeah.
So you have to know all those things. And then, I mean, it can work. It can work. So for example, when I was in Booking.com, we redesigned. So we took this efficiency workshops that we had, and then a couple of security workshops as well. And then we automated them. So we use software simulations. And me and my friend, so we created this Super Mario game. So it was like the end. So you would first get the theory, and then you would get the practice, and it was the solution for COVID, right? So at the time, we did not know, right? Like at that time, nobody knew. Like, are we ever going back to normal? Will we ever return to the office? Like, there were no clearance. So we said, okay, let's do something that can survive this. And we created those software simulations. And, well, the efficiency did drop, but not super significantly. So people were still able to get the most out of that workshop. But of course, it's a whole different experience when you are sitting with your colleagues and then you're all doing something, and then it's, at the same time, I think it was a really viable alternative at the time.
Cool. Then virtual trainings.
Virtual trainings.
Yeah.
So like, yes. So virtual, I mean, if you talk about virtual versus live, right? That's what you mean. Whether you should like video call or whether... Okay, so
because it is different.
It is definitely different.
Yeah.
It is definitely different.
Because it have this, you know, middle between the just e-learning and then, you know, face-to-face learning. So it have some benefits from e-learning, but then again some benefits from the face-to-face training.
I would say it has all the downsides of the e-learning, a lot of the downsides of the e-learning, and it really lacks on the upsides of the real like face-to-face learning.
Yeah.
So it's a convenience. So, and the biggest reason for the use of this convenience is just it's not always easy to get everybody in the same physical space.
So it's the main benefit from this. If you cannot put every like person
Believe
which
me,
needs.
Almost every single trainer, if he wants to have good quality training, and then like you would bring people live.
Yeah.
In very few cases, let's say if this material is somehow difficult to because, for example, when I was working in content moderation, right, and then you go through a lot of difficult topics, so some people may find it more comfortable to be like on their own, but even actually in that regard.
Yeah, but that's
every single trainer,
that's a bad thing, because if he just want to be by himself, that's a training. It should be that we sharing.
Correct. So the only reason really why companies have virtual trainings is because it's not always easy to get everybody.
Or maybe it's COVID.
But like imagine, like when I was a trainer, like at Booking.com, I had trainees from Berlin, from Barcelona, from London, from Vilnius, and then it was me, right? So otherwise you will have 5 trainees in Vilnius, 3 trainees in Barcelona, 4 trainees in Berlin. It's a very inefficient use of resources. Yeah. So the biggest reason for online trainings is efficiency and cost saving, but it's not really about the quality of the trainings.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if you want really quality, it's face to face. It's the number one option which you have to choose. Like if you want quality,
because and there are many reasons for why this is way less efficient than a live training. Well, first of all, is just the notion of focus. It's much easier to keep focus when you are in a classroom. Yeah. And then, like, it doesn't matter. You can be the most focused person in the world. But when you have your screen in front of you, it's filled with multiple distractions, right? Notifications come in, you receive some kind of email, maybe you open some kind of other, like, something passed through your mind, you open some kind of browser tab, like, it doesn't matter. But it's, like, this distraction machine, like, is in front of you. And another reason why it is more difficult is because, well, it's just more boring, you know? I mean, imagine you just sit there in front of a screen, and sometimes the trainings go for hours. Yeah. So it just goes on and on.
I think it's way harder to sit there at your place where you are alone than when you actually spending this time face to face. It's maybe more exhausting to be in this group for a full day than you sitting at home. But when you mention again this
Questionable
focus and
still,
stuff like
yes.
that, it's different.
Because imagine like when a camera is turned on, it's a bit of a weird effect, right? So you feel that you're being watched. So usually, like if you turn off the camera, for most people, it's like it's almost like a bit of a relief, like finally, like I can scratch my head or whatever. But then somehow, like in a training class, it's a bit less of an issue in a way.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there, you can still like scratch your head or like look somewhere else, and then it's more natural.
Yeah.
So, and another reason why live trainings are almost always preferable to online ones is just because, actually two more reasons. So one are the interactions are easier, right? So I'm sitting next to you and I have a small question, the trainer explains something, I'm like, Andrews, like, do you know this? And you can explain quickly something to me. You can answer some kind of question that I have. Or I have this connection with the trainer, and then I don't have to raise my virtual hand and then ask everybody. I can just catch his eye. And if I have a question, I'll be like, "Can I ask a question?" Okay, and then
And it's even
and I
other
can
way
ask my
around when
question.
the trainer
Correct.
seeing someone which may be
Yes.
looking strangely, and then he can say, maybe you have a question. I see that you may be looking
Yes.
into your book or
Yes.
somewhere which you
Yes.
should not maybe focus.
So that's
now.
another point, right? As a trainer, it's very difficult to feel the audience especially if you're sharing your screen. So you're sharing your screen and then you have a couple of people somewhere on the camera. I mean, it's very hard to feel the audience of like how much they really understand or not. But when you are inside, like when you are in the audience with them in the same building or in the same room, so you can feel like, okay, so this person, I don't know, he hasn't been really asking questions, and then by looking at him, it feels to me that he doesn't ask questions because he doesn't really understand. So let me see what's going on there, right? But then if you're just having a call, very hard to understand.
It's definitely more
Especially if you have
difficult.
like a bigger group of 20 people. You can't monitor 20 cameras and you go crazy.
I think not even every tool can even
No,
fit
no.
the screen. Yeah.
So how do you make sure that everybody is interested,
Like-
everybody participates?
Just thought one
Very
more. It's definitely harder when it's exercise, like splitting up to the groups, and then you have to work in the groups and do
course.
some exercise. Like virtual, it's way
course.
harder. And again, from the focus side and
Yes.
collaboration
And
thing,
look,
it's
man,
way different.
it's the training is not only like this information injected in your hand, in your head from your trainer, right? So the actual engagement matters a lot.
Yeah.
So because the more engaged you are, the more focused you are. Like that's just by definition. And so when you are in that classroom, and especially if the training goes on for multiple days, and let's say it's an onboarding training, so you are building these connections, you're building this, like you're feeling the company, you're feeling the training, and then the training goes much faster. If you can keep that was always my approach as a trainer, right? Engage, inspire, let them learn, and then give them the resources. But they do it themselves. So, and it's much easier to organize if you're in the same classroom.
Yeah.
And it's much harder to do if you have to establish these virtual bridges.
Yeah. And I have one more. It's material. How to actually
Yes.
prepare the material? Where to get this information? Is it fully you have to already know? And
I think it
again,
depends
everything-
on the
yeah.
topic, right?
But
I mean,
what are again options? What are most common then? Like where
Well,
to gather the inspiration?
material?
Yeah, for the trains.
well, it really, I think, depends on the industry that you work in and the task that you're doing. So, for example, when we were working with, let's say, sanctions, so you have all the sanctions materials, right? So all the papers, all the legal documents, and then you have to process them into something more readable and more approachable. But I would say building the material starts with understanding the goals and the learning objectives of your training.
Yeah.
So because at the end of the training, you want people to know something very specific.
Yeah.
What kind of a task do you want this person to do? or what kind of information do you want this person to retain. And so then you build your learning objectives, then you build your priorities of like what are the most important learning objectives, and then you start seeing what you have already in the company.
Yeah.
If there's anything available, if maybe somebody did training like that a year ago, 2 years ago, or maybe it's
because
right available.
I totally agree. Maybe you can reuse some
Yes.
older trainings.
It's really
one
important
option.
not to keep reinventing the wheel, right?
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so it's, you can take the existing material and improve that. Sometimes it's not always available. So if it's not available, then you have to build that.
Yeah.
And then that's way more challenging, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
because you have to find a person which would be, good enough, like an expert, which you could share what you're missing from the, material which you have
Yes.
to clear, I guess. Or again, the simplest one, World Wide Web.
Yes.
Just Google it.
Yes.
Now I think now it's way easier than when I had to create trainings like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because
Of
now you
course.
can use the AI tools, which
yes.
so much easier to get the material with those simple questions, and then he can even provide you full course material.
Of
You
course,
just need to change
of
something.
course. A lot also depend on what kind of learning management
Yeah.
system are you using,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So the more advanced learning management system it is, or as they now call them, learning experience platforms. So the easier would it be to build and integrate material, right? So sometimes you don't even need to really create a lot of content. So you can include a YouTube video, some kind of a file, maybe like an article to read, and then the questions, and then some kind of a game at the end, and then a quiz, and then there you go, you have a course, So you don't always really need to create like an advanced e-learning. Like you can use the existing things just to make sure that it is incredibly important to make sure that your training has a flow, has a story, and it achieves the learning objectives. So that's what your material is doing. Like you cannot just start creating the material. You need to have the structure and fill that structure with what fills the purpose for that specific part of the training. So that's why creating material is so difficult sometimes for people, because they just skip that step. So, but you cannot skip that step.
I guess again, this is something which we didn't talk, and maybe we can mention, because when you mentioned this, you need to think about this what you want to add and stuff like that. I thought about the reason why you doing these trainings, because I thought even already two reasons from my head, from my personal experience. Like one reason was that there was not something need from a company or from my colleagues. I just learned something and I want to share with my so I created some kind of learnings, and then it's like a test run. Oh, do you want to join these learnings? It's about this and this thing, and then people maybe will join another. This reason is actually when you already have a demand, like someone saying, oh, you know what, we lacking understanding about this, we need training about this. So there are all the two different reasons, but the one which subtopic which we can talk about is the duration of the training.
Yes.
Again, it really depends on the topic and stuff like that, but I believe that there are some like best option for durations.
Sure.
Maybe you can share your opinion about the durations.
Sure. So it also depends like on what type of a training it is, right? So if it's an e-learning, so typically e-learning, you can allow yourself, because a person can make a pause at any point in time, right? The entire duration of the e-learning can be longer, but then the smaller parts of the e-learning, they should still stay small for the person to be able to focus, right? Because it would be hard to listen to like 30 minutes of somebody talking or to do a real long task. And then, so the tasks and the small learnings, they should still be kept relatively small.
Yeah.
But the entire duration can be larger.
Yeah, it depends
because
on the
you
topic,
can make
like.
a pause at any point. You can revisit. You can. And now, when it comes to let's say real life trainings, So the obvious, let's say, constraints are whether your training group is hungry, whether they want water, whether they need just a break, whether there's enough air to breathe in the classroom. And so I would say that generally speaking, like me as a trainer, every hour I would make a small pause, right? Whether it is to ask questions, whether it take a couple of minutes to go outside, but every hour I would make a pause.
And from my perspective, I didn't saw virtual or face-to-face training which would be less than an hour. Like it's such a hard to find. Like I don't feel that it will be even proper suitable material shared like shorter than an hour, because as you mentioned, these e-learnings, they could even 10-20 minutes you read and you can even test at the same time.
Correct.
But when you're talking about this interaction and virtual or face-to-face, from my perspective, I like few years ago, like 3-4 years ago, I would say 2 hours it would be like good duration. Now I feel that 4 hours is the suitable, perfect time to
depends
spend
what you want to
more time into, with the icebreakers and then recaps and stuff like that. Again, it depends on the topic,
really
on the
depends
company,
on the topic.
on
Really
the
depends
people.
on the topic.
But I believe from 2 to 4 hours is good duration.
Yes.
The full day trainings, it's a challenge for everyone.
It is.
Yeah.
It is definitely a challenge, and
And I'm not saying about certification, which maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days. It's a bit different. It's a training a bit different than certification. So yeah, but it can be even a few days. But then it should be really, really interesting and then a huge topic to even extend for more than a day. I think again a day.
Well, it really depends on the topic, right? So, I mean, my onboarding trainings were 2 weeks. So we would spend 2 weeks in the same classroom all together every single day. And I mean, but it depends on the purpose and the topic and the type of training. So that matters a lot.
Yeah.
Let's say, I mean, let's imagine you want to do a training on soft skills. You cannot really do it briefly.
No.
They wouldn't work, because whenever you do a topic on the soft skills, because soft skills is not an exact science. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why it's soft, right? So then the whole purpose of the training is not just to provide your version and then for everybody to keep silent. It's the opposite. So you need to engage the audience, and then they would learn from each other, and then they would learn. Sometimes people, when they would say something out loud, they'll be like, oh, wow, this is an interesting insight. Yeah. So the whole idea, let's say, behind leadership or behind, let's say, trainings on feedback or teamwork or like whatever it is people need to be maximally engaged.
Yeah, and this takes time.
And you cannot do that in a short period of time. Like that's
totally agree.
Just not doable. So that typically requires a longer period.
And I agree. Like if it's a soft skills, I think the full day is actually optimal thing.
Well, depends on the topic, but yeah, I mean, it's really hard to imagine soft skill training for 30 minutes. Like, you will barely introduce the topic, and then you'll have one or two questions, and then that would be it. But if you want to, I don't know, for people to learn, let's say, how to calculate a specific indicator, well, you can do that in 30 minutes, 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. Cool. And then you mentioned about this, the feedback thing, because you did a training, you create a training.
Yes.
You kind of should have some indicator if actually this training is successful.
Of course.
Or not.
Of course.
So what maybe there are
What are
options?
the indicators of a successful training?
But what may be different options of that?
Sure.
How to work on this?
You can take a couple of measurements throughout time, right? So the most obvious one is, well, how did people feel right after training? So you send a survey, whether everything was great or not. And that usually represents the feeling after the training, right? Because people don't really know yet how effective it is, but they might get an idea. So so you capture that initial feedback, that initial feeling. Unfortunately, most people stop there, right? But then that's not enough, right? Because people might rate the trainer high just because they felt amazing during the training. Because a lot of people like to learn, it's a fun activity, you're not doing your routine job, you're doing something fun together, so hey, great, 10 out of 10. But then the actual results are, of course, as important or maybe even more important, right? So then what you can do is that you can ask the same people, let's say 1 month in advance. So guys, like, how did it go? Like the lessons that you learned 1 month ago, are they still applicable? Like, what do you think about that? Another thing that you can do is, because you are targeting specific tasks, right, that you need to do. So you can measure the effectiveness of training by KPIs. So our new hire training, our most important KPI, actually for any kind of new hire training, the most important KPI is how quickly does the person become the average worker, from a beginner to average, like what's the speed of that? And the shorter it is, then the better onboarding is organized, right? So you measure that, right? And those requirements, they come from the business. So I want my customer service representative by the end of month 1 to have quality of 93% and efficiency of, I don't know, 50 cases a day. Like, okay. By the end of month 3, I want to have a quality of 97% and efficiency of 100 cases per day, you know? So, and then that's how your training becomes effective, is when you are able to hit those KPIs.
Yeah.
Now, it is much more complicated when you talk about soft skills, right?
Yeah.
So technical trainings are much easier measurable.
It's data driven. Like you can measure by data. Like
Yes.
as you mentioned, if it's a percentage or stuff like that, you can track that.
It can be a great combination of qualitative and quantitative data, right? So the KPIs, the actual performance, then the feedback. It can be also like a very good idea to make the feedback from the team leaders. And so that's how you would be able to see like whether this is working or not working. Or much more difficult to do when that's soft skills training, right? So in there, you just have to be more creative. So that initial part matters a lot, the initial survey. Then the other survey, let's say 1 month later, becomes even more important now. But there what you can do is to use a little trick to see whether, for example, there is a difference in performance of the same person before and after the training, between people who took the training and did not take the training. And you can also do just, if it's a team leader, let's say it was a training on feedback, well, what does his team think? Did it really improve? Did it not improve? And so you, because you don't have hard data, you can just get more data, and then this will substitute, or will be an imperfect substitute for not having the exact data, because just the sheer amount of more, let's say, abstract or more qualitative data would at least partially correct for the inaccuracy.
Yeah, and again, it is actually really important to gather the feedback, because without it, you can create it, you can spend time, you can even use time from your participants, but then you don't even know if it's actually usable, if it's created value, or just spend time to maybe again to spend time together, which would be like a I don't know, fun team activity or whatever. But in the end, maybe you didn't want to achieve the fun activity, you wanted actually to train on specific topic, which maybe it kind of didn't help. Cool. And as we already talking for quite some time, maybe the last, what you would recommend for the people who maybe will try to do trainings, maybe they are new to this thing, what you would recommend to, what I know,
for
focus
people,
on or stuff like that?
For people who want to become trainers, or
who want to I think become
trainer,
maybe create trainings, because it's two different things. When it's already created, it's one thing, but the ones which
so people to create trainings, have a lot of patience. Not everybody would be grateful for your work, right? Keep that in mind, right? So have a thick skin. People will not always filter out their feedback. So you need to understand that this something that you were creating for a long time, that it's actually the feedback on that and not necessarily on you.
Yeah.
And then
I want to a bit elaborate about it because it's such a true what you just said. Because again, I think in general, when we seeing in just life, people like to highlight things which they don't like more than the things they like. They usually don't say, oh, what a nice thing, and write something. But if something not good, they will definitely complain.
They
and
would
send
usually
into different
positive feedback would be abstract and negative feedback would be very specific.
yeah.
And so that's why positive feedback would lose its meaning and negative feedback would just like sting.
But I totally agree that you have to have this thick skin, because even with those negative or negative, but the feedback which would like to change your training, maybe it's only a perspective which it's actually you specifically did it like that. So okay, it's good that this person said his opinion, but it doesn't mean that you have to change it.
No.
It all depends if you intended it is,
Yes.
and is it really something which you kind of makes sense to change. Because I remember from the trainings which again this negative which you usually remember in your mind, that it was just, oh, I would not use the red color, I would use the blue color for this.
Sure.
It's kind of cool, but I think I didn't even have the blue color. That's why I used red color, So it's kind of, maybe I can change, but is it really critical for the material?
What's the impact of that change?
So it depends. So every feedback is you have to accept it, but you need to think about why this person may be saying like this. Is it actually something which impacting my trainings? Maybe I did mistake, and that's fine. But maybe it's just one person's opinion, which not something which you actually have to change. Something.
Correct. Feedback is something that you need to look at and think about it, right? I mean, it's something that you just need to be open to change and to be open to challenge your own logic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, somebody writes, let's change the font, and you're like, well, yeah, sure. But maybe 10 other people write the same thing. And then
maybe
you're
it
like,
was
okay,
too
well,
small
actually,
or something like
maybe
that.
it's too much in your face. Maybe let's actually change the font. So it really depends on the impact and on whether this would serve the purpose that you are trying to achieve, right? Because, that's really important to remember. The trainings, like, they are done to achieve a very specific business outcome. Because if the training is not married to an outcome, it will never work. And that's always a key thing to remember.
Cool. So thank you, Johannes. I think we added a lot of things on the board which we covered. So I hope it was fun. I hope it was useful for you. And again, if you will have any questions about these trainings, just leave a comment, and I will share the links with Johannes, so he will answer to your
I
questions.
will, promise.
Yeah. And today, thank you, Johannes, and
All right.
till next time.
Thank you, Andres.
Thank you. See ya.